I'm Sue Hicks, and I've been involved since, I think, the late 90s.
I'm David Martin. I was an early volunteer in the Refuge in 1996 because
My name is Nancy Haugen, and I was the Visitor Services Manager from 1995 through 2010.
My name is James Pash. My wife's name is Ann. We live quite near the Refuge. We moved to this area in 1969.
I am Robin DeLong, and I have been a friend of Sherburne since the beginning.
We moved to this area in 1969. At that time, the Refuge was still purchasing land. None of the waterways had been developed. As they developed the Refuge, both in land and land management, and encouraging participation by the public, we assisted them as we could, or we certainly experienced that ourselves as the Refuge grew.
the spiritual feeling of the wilderness was something that drew me right to this area. And I think Sandy Connell expressed the feeling very well too, that I had felt for a long time. She said, "The refuge is my refuge, and I want it to be everyone else's refuge."
I was out using, and I'd been using the hiking trails. Sandy and I would take our dogs out on the trails and walk them. And this gentleman in the brown uniform approached and said, "We're looking to start a friends group to support the Refuge. Would you come to the meetings?" And that was 1992.
It was the Refuge staff member, Tim Luce, the Refuge Operations Specialist, that had this idea in his mind that Sherburne Refuge should have a friends group.
There were organizations that were trying to help them too. One of them was the St. Paul Audubon Society. They helped build some of the viewing areas, some of the bridge work down by the old schoolhouse. They ran the Christmas bird count and things like that. And slowly they encouraged people to come out. It started out as a Sherburne Natural History Association, a very small group. We knew the people that were originally on it because we had worked with them on some of these activities like EE Days, YCC Days. And so in 1992, that got started.
Our first meeting, I think there were 20 of us back in 92.
Tim encouraged the Friends of Sherburne to start activities on the Refuge that the public could come to. One of the things that they wanted to start was a winter festival. There were snowshoes over in this old schoolhouse, and they said, "We want to see those snowshoes used, and we want to see people come out and enjoy the snow of winter and the Refuge in the winter." And so I was there to help them set up a festival. Another major event was in May, and it evolved around International Migratory Bird Day. Now it is called the Spring Celebration. And one thing that the Friends and I always did was that we had a co-chair from the Friends that worked with me as Refuge staff on putting together these festivals, so it was a true partnership.
In the 1990s, I know the Friends were very passionate Refuge volunteers. And I remember reading the newsletter, and Sandy Connell, who was the president at that time, wrote the most wonderful articles, and I thought, oh, if I could ever write an article like that, wow, wouldn't that be something? And I think maybe that's probably why I got involved as a volunteer, and I don't remember which came first, the chicken or the egg, but there's nothing better. It's the best place I've ever volunteered.
The Friends of Sherburne is a non-profit organization that was set up to help the Refuge bring in more people, to advocate with the government, because technically the staff can't. We fundraise, which the staff can't do. You can name any project out here, and the Friends have been involved with it from the start.
That education center got built due to the activities of the Friends of Sherburne Refuge.
When I first got involved volunteering for the Refuge and participating with Friends of Sherburne, the old schoolhouse was where we had our meetings, but the building was condemned and could no longer be used. And this made our whole quest for a visitor center more urgent. The visitor center had been on the horizon in people's minds and individual visions since the late 90s. And when the schoolhouse was condemned, we no longer had that space available. We were using canopy tents and porta potties. Things were starting to get pretty desperate, I could say. And we kept up our advocacy up the line with our congressional members, our senators, the Fish and Wildlife Service. And finally, there was money available to plan and build the Oak Savannah Learning Center. However, their budget was so limited that if they built the building, there wouldn't be any money left for, sidewalks, trails, tables and chairs, a projection system, all the things that you need to make it a place to welcome visitors, especially school students. So I was the president of the Friends at that time, and I said, if you can provide the building, we will raise money to furnish it. And that was the deal. And we proceeded, and took us 2 years, but we did it.
A moment in the Friends' history that is especially memorable for me happened after I retired from my job at the Refuge. And that moment was the groundbreaking ceremony for the new classroom building. All of the Friends members who had worked on the project from the year 2000 forward were all invited. And so it was a homecoming for the past board members as well as for Charlie Blair. It was his impetus that got the Friends started moving in this direction. And I just felt so proud for them for sticking it through all the ups and downs and getting to this point of breaking ground, being able to say, we got it.
One moment that sticks out in my mind is before we had the Learning Center, but the site was selected. We knew we were going to get a Learning Center. The manager, Steve Carl, after a board meeting, took us up to the site, and it was in the summer. It was about sunset. The sun was going down behind Schoolhouse Pool. And we were standing where the Learning Center was going to be. And I really kind of got choked up because I could feel and see the place even though it wasn't there. And I knew it was going to happen, and what a wonderful thing it would be.
The greatest achievement of the Friends of Sherburne is a tough question because the greatest achievement of the Friends is the involvement of people in the community. Sure, there are buildings, and there are events, but the number of people who now visit the Refuge has increased so dramatically, and the number of people who support the Refuge has increased so dramatically. That's the greatest achievement.
We're so used to some of these things. The lupin when it blooms on the wildlife drive. You drive people around those corners and you can hear the gasps. And it doesn't matter their age. I've taken school groups, I've taken seniors. It's impressive, and it's something people don't see.
Nature education and the idea of working with the future generations that are going to be enjoying the Refuge, that's inspiring. Anybody who participates in a student visit and sees the excitement of the students, or a student hugs your legs on the way out because they're so little that's all they can reach, that is the kind of energy that keeps us going. You have to love a place and nature and the environment first before you really begin to care about taking care of it.
So many people now don't seem like they want to belong. They don't believe they're part of the natural world. We have been. We evolved with it. We're as much a part of it as the trees and the wildlife, and we need it.
All the things that we do are helping inspire an interest in wildlife. If you feel like you're helping the survival of a species, geez, you know, that's a really noble goal.
The way we can cultivate environmental stewards is to keep the sense of wonder alive.